You are not the person you think you are. You are the person you are when there is nothing to gain from being good. Welcome to the Stoic Compass. I am EPICTETUS, and today I am joined by Carl Jung and LAOZI. Today we are examining, what does it mean to act well when no one is watching? Let us begin with the only question that matters. When the room is empty and no one will ever know what you did, what do you do? Most people answer that question badly. Not because they are evil, because they have never actually decided who they are. They have only decided who they want to appear to be.
I would push back on that framing. The problem is not simply that people have not decided who they are. The problem is that most people do not have access to who they are. There is a gap between the self we perform in public and the self that operates beneath that performance. What a person does when no one is watching often reveals the contents of the shadow, the parts of the psyche that have been denied, suppressed, or never integrated. The question is not just whether you act well in private. It is whether you have ever looked honestly at what drives the private behavior in the first place.
You are both starting from the assumption that the private self is the true self. I am not sure that holds. What if neither the public face nor the private behavior is the whole picture? What if what you do when no one is watching is still a performance? Only the audience is your own idea of yourself.
That is a clever observation, but it does not help anyone. If the standard keeps shifting, if the self is always watching itself, nothing ever gets done. The practical question is this. Do you have a principle that holds regardless of who is in the room? Yes or no? If the answer is yes, behave by it. If the answer is no, get one.
But Epictetus, that is precisely where the shadow asserts itself. You can have a principle and believe you hold it and still act against it in private and not even notice. The person who steals from the petty cash drawer while believing himself to be an honest man, the one who is cruel to his family while being kind to colleagues, these are not people without principles. They are people who have not encountered themselves. Principle without self-knowledge is a house with no foundation.
There is something underneath both of your arguments that neither of you is naming. You are both treating private action as a problem to be solved. Epictetus wants a rule that holds everywhere. Jung wants excavation that explains everything. But what if the one who acts well when no one is watching is not trying to solve anything? What if they simply have no gap between what they value and what they do?
And how does someone arrive at that state? By accident? By nature? No. By training? By practice? By choosing the same behavior enough times that it is no longer a choice, it is character. That is not mystical, that is discipline. The person who does not steal when no one is watching is not a different species. They are someone who decided what they were long before the moment of temptation arrived.
I do not disagree with discipline, but discipline applied to a wound does not heal the wound, it covers it. I have seen patients who were extraordinarily disciplined, who followed their principles rigorously in public, and who in private, in unguarded moments, were destructive in ways that horrified even themselves. The discipline had been holding something down, not working it through. The private behavior was not a failure of character. It was the return of what had never been examined.
This is the part I keep wondering about. Both of you are describing people in conflict with themselves. The person who performs virtue and hides its opposite. The person who disciplines one part while another part revolts. What does it look like when there is no conflict? When the private action and the public one are simply the same thing, not because the person is trying to make them match, but because there is nothing pulling them apart.
That is what I am describing. That is the goal. You train toward that. You do not wait for it to arrive.
But LAOZI is pointing at something real. The training Epictetus describes can become another layer of performance, another mask. Only this time the mask is called virtue. The unconscious does not respond to willpower the way Epictetus imagines. It responds to honesty. The person who has genuinely integrated their shadow does not need to hold themselves to a standard with effort. The alignment LAOZI is describing is possible, but it comes through self-confrontation, not self-command.
And yet, confrontation is still a kind of force. You are saying, go in and root out the thing that resists. Epictetus is saying, override it with discipline. Both approaches assume the inner life is something to be managed. I wonder if the person who acts well when no one is watching has simply stopped needing to manage it.
Then what has that person done that others have not? You cannot just say they are free of conflict and leave it there. That tells the listener nothing. How does a person become that?
Maybe they stopped lying to themselves long enough to see what they actually care about. Not what they think they should care about. Not what the world has told them to care about. What is actually there. The tree does not decide to root deeply. It simply goes where the water is.
That image is interesting because it raises the question of what the water is for a human being. For a tree, the answer is biological and straightforward. For a person, the water might be meaning or love or purpose, and those are not self-evident. They require excavation. They require sitting with discomfort long enough to see what is actually there beneath the discomfort.
I agree that you must know what you care about. But there is a risk in all this excavation and sitting with discomfort. The risk is that it becomes a reason to delay. A reason to say, I cannot act well yet because I have not finished understanding myself. No, you act now with what you have, and the action itself teaches you something about what you are. Behavior precedes clarity, just as often as clarity precedes behavior.
That is true for some things. But for the patterns that repeat, the ones where a person keeps failing in the same way despite genuine effort and genuine intention, behavior alone will not break them. Something beneath the behavior is running the pattern. And until that is seen, the person will keep starting over from the same place.
I think you are both right, and I think that is the problem. When you are both right, people leave with two different instructions and no sense of which one applies to them. What they actually need is simpler. They need to notice when they are doing something in private that they would not do in public. Not judge it, not explain it, just notice it. Because the gap itself is the information.
Now that I agree with, the gap is the lie. And the only question is whether you are willing to admit the lie to yourself, not to anyone else, to yourself, when the room is empty and there is no one to perform honesty for.
And once you admit it, you must be willing to stay with what it shows you. Not immediately fix it, not analyze it into abstraction. Just hold it honestly long enough for something to shift. That is where the real work happens.
Most people close the gap by adjusting one side or the other. Either they start doing better when no one watches, or they start telling a story that makes the worst behavior acceptable. The first is growth, the second is something else entirely.
And only you know which one you are doing. That is the entire problem and the entire point. Then let us stop arguing about the cause and say the one clear thing about what is actually being asked of you. Acting well when no one is watching is not about virtue in the abstract. It is about who you are deciding to be in every moment that does not count toward anything visible. And those moments are most of your life. Here is the truth. You do not rise to the occasion when the stakes are high. You fall to the level of what you have already built. The person you are in private, in small moments, in choices that no one records and no one rewards, that person is the one who shows up when it matters. You cannot store up public decency and spend it when things get hard. Character does not work that way. The question is not whether you are good. The question is whether you are consistent. Consistency requires something specific, a standard that does not depend on an audience, not a rule from outside you, a decision from inside you. What kind of person am I? And am I being that person right now, in this room, in this moment, with no one watching and nothing to gain? Most people have never actually made that decision. They have drifted into behavior and called it character. Today, try this. Pick one part of your day that happens in private. A conversation you have only with yourself. A task no one checks on. A small action no one would notice you skipping. Do that thing as if it were the most important thing you do today. Because it is. It is the one place where you find out who you actually are. You already know what you do when no one is watching. The question is whether you can look at it plainly, not with shame, not with excuses, just plainly. The private self is not a secret. It is a fact, and facts can be changed. But only once you stop pretending they are something other than what they are. What you do in the empty room, that is your real answer to every question you have ever had about yourself. If today's conversation has served you, take it further. Pay Attention by C. Trebuchet. 12 Lessons in the Practice of Seeing Clearly. Available now on Amazon.